Episode 4, entitled Can't Say I Remember at Aten, opens where we left off in the previous episode, with the crew on the Onyx Cinder flying towards the coordinates given to them by Kim. As we approach the planet, we fly by broken satellites, which seem to show that there used to be a barrier that no longer exists around this planet. As they draw closer, all of a sudden the ship turns into an autopilot sequence, bringing it into land. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't remember that this happens anywhere else in Star Wars, where a ship has pre-programmed autopilot depending upon the planet it's landing towards, or if it's just one of the settings that's on, but I'm not quite sure. Either way, SM-33 overrides that and takes it in for a landing at what appears to be an old playground. And as soon as they land on this planet, we recognize that something isn't right. It looks like at Aten, but something has happened. It's overgrown. It looks like a post-apocalyptic at Aten. It's complete with identical buildings and layout. More on this later. As the kids head off to explore this unknown planet, they tell Jod to remain on the ship. Again, a decision that just doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you want SM-33 and Jod with you as you go investigating? But either way, we do get one of the funniest lines we've had in the show up to this point.
33, keep Jod on the ship until we get back.
Aye, aye, Captain. Initiating babysitting sequence. Come on, baby.
The kids appear to be taken prisoner by a member of the Toit tribe, being asked what flag do they fly, but as soon as that happens, they have to hide as some patrol is walking through, so they hide in a old subway tram car that they would have taken to school. As they loudly talk and Wim sticks his head up, they obviously aren't seen because the story says they can't be seen. This is the worst patrol I've ever seen. But as this happens, they are then gain the trust of this random stranger who just a minute ago had guns pointed at them, and now they follow her all the way back to their home base on top of what appears to be a school. At this school, they find out that they're not on at Aten. Instead, they're on at Akron. A note that would be easily missed if you don't turn on the subtitles to the show. We also find out that this world treats kids a little bit differently. Instead of shielding them from everything that could go wrong and protecting them, they go to the opposite extreme. Now, they say they're honoring kids and helping them see their full potential, but I don't know. I don't think that making kids into soldiers is honoring them. It feels kind of backwards.
You are warriors then?
We're kids.
But on this world we treat our children as adults. We acknowledge their strength and we help them help themselves. Get on your feet, soldier. And welcome. If we didn't honor our children, then my daughter Hannah never would have saved you.
They learn that the coordinates to Aten may be in a place called the Fallen Sanctum. Oh, but it's far too dangerous for them to go. So they first have to show that they can get there by shooting some cans off of a drum. It just doesn't really work. And this is the part of the episode that really starts to fall flat. From this point on, I just kind of didn't care. It felt pointless. It felt like they were just trying to do something. Like it felt like a video game quest. Like you had to do this tutorial before you could go do the thing to get to the boss, to get to the next thing. This wasn't well written. There was not the tension that was needed. And then they head into the next part because Neil doesn't want to shoot any guns. So he follows this supposed leader. After Jod had been caught by SM-33 trying to take credits or steal credits from Wim's bag, we later catch up to the crew as they're walking out onto the ground of Akron. Jod is trying to jog the memory of SM-33. He feels there's more to be mined that are in those circuits that they don't know about. And as that happens, somehow this patrol that didn't see the kids in the train car, stumbles upon the Onyx Cinder, Jod, and SM-33. And as they're talking loudly about treasure, Jod just simply gives up.
You there! What flag do you fly?
You know what? Just shoot me.
No fighting back, no use of the Force, no attempt at a mind trick or anything, just gives up. Why? Oh, because the 32-minute runtime I don't think could allow for us to actually learn anything more. We couldn't go any further. And I know I'm being a little bit cynical about this episode, but I had high hopes. The previous 3 episodes of this show I thought were really solid. I thought they set up some really good things. And then I start to see the same old lazy storytelling that we see in these Disney shows. This felt like an episode of Ahsoka, where you get something interesting from Baylan and Shin, and then the rest of the episode is just boring nothing that didn't seem to make sense. I think you could have cut this episode down to 10 minutes. Everything that happened here, you could have cut so much of the fluff out and just stuck with the interesting parts of the story, which are what's going on with this planet. I thought the planet was destroyed. This clearly is one of those 9 planets that Kim had talked about that were like at Aten. Where did the treasure go, or all of the wealth go from this planet? Who robbed it? Who stole it? There's just so many questions. How is that connected to the Onyx Cinder and these pirates? Because clearly there's a connection. All of that is what's best about this show, but they have to go on this side quest with the kids. Now, I will say, part of it is this becomes more of a kid's show than I thought it was going to be. Honestly, I went into this show thinking, this isn't really for kids. I think this is more for adults who were kids in the 80s and 90s. But I was wrong. I was duped into thinking that this was going to really be for me, when in reality, it really is for kids. I mean, my kid's favorite character, my oldest daughter's favorite character, is KB, because she has an interesting haircut and cool glasses. And my other daughter's favorite character is Neil, because he's an elephant. And when it comes down to it, that works for kids. But if you're really trying to expand past that, you still need to do more. You still need to do better storytelling. I'm getting off. We need to finish the rest of the episode. We're back with Neil and his supposed love interest. We see some of who Neil is, this kind, loving, just kind of peaceful soul who's willing to give his ration of food to 2 hungry kids who look like they need it. And that's something that clearly might be missing from this planet, that kind of kindness. And we see that in the way that the children are forced into being soldiers at such a young age, that everything is about defeating this other and not finding a peaceful resolution. And I think Neil brings up some interesting points and some interesting dialogue. And there's a kind of a subtext that's happening behind this, that it isn't great when the kids are just sheltered from everything. And it also isn't great when the kids are just forced into war. I like the juxtaposition of those two things, but I think it could have been investigated or brought to the forefront in a much more interesting way, instead of in this conversation that we get between Neil and the love interest on the side. Then we flash back to the training where everyone can't really shoot a blaster except KB. She's sniping these things off like womp rats on Tatooine, and it's kind of hilarious that she's so good. But then something happens. Something really interesting happens in the rest of the episode. After that moment, Wim is excited and is like, wow, you're amazing. He goes to give her a high five. She has no emotion. She has no reaction. And it reminded me that earlier in the episode, when they were kind of seeing that they had to go and hide, KB would just stand there, had no fear, had no worry, had no concern, almost as if she doesn't understand human emotions. We don't know what her parentage really entails, other than she has 2 moms, so she can't be the biological daughter of those 2. So what is it? Was she created and made and purchased? I don't know. My mind goes kind of down all these things. I'm starting to think that she is more droid than humanoid or whatever it might be. And then from that training, so for some reason, the kids are forced into a battle where they have to be put on the front lines. Again, maybe highlighting the weirdness or just the darkness of this planet. But again, it comes with this playful French accent that I just did not really enjoy. And it just didn't really work. I think I understand what they were going for, but it didn't connect. It fell flat. They're walking up front. You don't really get this sense that the kids are in any real danger. They're just kind of moving forward. Neil's scared in the back, and so his friend comes and they walk up together. And what happens? Nothing. It just happens to be Jod all of a sudden with SM-33 and the herd of animals that had been taken from this tribe. And here is the plot hole. How did Jod know any of that? How did Jod know any of that? Now, he gives his reasoning in the conversation after they've kind of made up, and he says, hey, I did this. I bought them for you so that you can have them back. I want the kids, and we're going to go to this fallen sanctum to find the coordinates. And so they go. And on the way there, he's talking about how he found out about this, how he was captured by this other squad, this other enemy tribe. And they knew that the kids had been taken by this other tribe. Well, how did they know? They didn't know. They walked right past them. They didn't even know kids were on the planet. They didn't know anything. But somehow Jod knew, and then he said, well, how about I buy the herd of animals from you. Here's these credits so I can go get my friends. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Absolutely doesn't make sense. It's not what a pirate would do. It just doesn't make sense, and it's frustrating because, yes, kids aren't going to notice that. My kids didn't notice that when we watched the episode just this morning. They loved it. They enjoyed it. They thought it was funny. They liked everything about it, and that makes me like it more. But it's plot holes like this that are just lazy. Lazy. You could have easily gotten a whole different mode, a whole different thing. You could have had a standoff. You could have had all kinds of different things and it not be like that. Jod didn't have to be separated from the kids to begin with. So, but it all felt forced. It all felt like it had to happen this way just so that they could have these moments, like these predetermined moments that just didn't land. And I know I'm being pretty harsh here, but this is how I feel. This was a weak episode. I'm not saying the show is garbage. I'm not saying the show is trash. I still enjoy the show overall. But man, this was the first moment that I saw a big crack in the armor. I was willing to take it and go, okay, it may not feel like Star Wars every moment, every second. I get it. That's okay. But we're going to keep moving. So the episode then shifts to them going to the fallen sanctum, which ends up being the supervisor's tower. Now, was there any danger for them to get to the fallen sanctum? No. Was there any treachery or no? There was none of it. They just got on an elevator, hot-wired the elevator, went up to this fallen sanctum. No one's there. Nothing's there. There's no danger that was kind of talked about. And Wim walks up to a column. He touches it, says he finds something. All of a sudden, all these different columns have coordinates to all these different worlds that sound a lot like at Aten and at Akron. But they get to the one that Neil finds that says at Aten, and the coordinates are swiped off. Looks like it's swiped off by a lightsaber. That was my first thought when I looked at it. But in reality, we find out that it was actually SM-33.
Who would do that?
I did. Why, were you looking for those?
You destroyed them? When?
When I was here before, with my old captain.
And here I think is an interesting part of the episode that is part of the thing that makes this all kind of work still. Like, I like the world building type stuff. I like the things of wondering what's happened to all these planets. When they first showed up on this planet, I thought they'd actually gone through like a time wormhole and were still on Aten, but it was thousands of years in the future when it had all collapsed or something. I don't know how they would have made that work, so I'm glad they didn't do time travel. But that's what I was thinking. And now we're finding out that SM-33 had been previously in this place, had been previously here, and that his captain had ordered the crew to be killed or anyone that had seen the coordinates be killed, and for SM-33 to wipe off the coordinates. It really brings up some interesting plot lines and stories of, okay, did they take all the treasure from this planet? Did they destroy the satellites? Did they do all of this stuff? And destroy all the other 8 and leave Atten alone so they could have it for themselves. Very, very interesting. And so we then have Fern and Wim have this moment that I thought was actually good. I thought this was well acted. We're seeing the chinks in the armor of Fern, the hyper perfectionism that is weighing on her and creating anxiety that she knows she can't live up to, this perfection standard. And so she puts on this mask to be this calloused, hard, confident person, but yet inside she's not. And I think it's really an interesting commentary on what happens to people that are pushed to this attitude of perfectionism, that when we tell our kids that this is what you can be and this is how you're going to act, and partly why I think it connects is because I see the anxiety and depression of kids today on an all-time high because of this perfectionism, because this ultimate comparing to everything else. So I really resonated with that. I think that's a really interesting character development, but that's the only moment I think in this whole show of this episode where we got actual good character development, and we get it for a minute, just enough time for her to get an idea to go try and reset SM-33 like she reset her home droid to try and get back to all of this. While I think that's an interesting thing, it backfires and SM-33 turns on the kids, kind of doing his little
Pull them apart! Pull them apart!
Limb from limb.
get up to get ready to fight, and he's saying pull them apart, following his old captain's orders. It brings up some issues though, because they've already kind of established that he's for his new captain, so why would these old orders override the current orders? Doesn't quite make sense. And in a moment where he's going after Fern and the other kids, Neil shows a moment of bravery, throws a rock at SM. SM turns to go get Neil, and Jod jumps in and turns off SM-33. Again, no use of the Force, nothing. It just shows that I don't think there is anything to Jod as a Jedi in any way, shape, or form. I don't actually think after this episode he has any Force sensitivity, or if he does, it makes no sense because he's not using it when they need it. No clue what's going on actually with all of that. And then the episode just ends with Neil passing out. And this again gets to another frustration that I have, is this episode actually felt too short. Yes, I still want more, but it felt like they stopped at a random place where a commercial would be, not actually continuing the story. We needed more. We needed to see them getting on the plane and setting their strategy for what's going to come forward. Now, yes, we can theorize what's probably going to happen. I think they're probably going to choose one of those other planets to go to and to see and find out about, and we're going to get to investigate more, and maybe more breadcrumbs will be spilled. But I'm concerned because the stuff that happened actually on this planet was the worst part of the show to date. And maybe it can only get better, but if they're going to hop from planet to planet and it's going to be more like what we just saw in the middle part of this episode, man, it's going to be a slow slog, kind of just pushing through these weird like level type episodes where you have to do this thing to get to this thing, to do this thing to get to this thing. And it just doesn't quite work. I'm still enjoying the show. I'm going to do some more theory videos about what I think's going on with the satellites and the pirates and all of that type of stuff. I have some ideas there. Like I said, I have some more ideas about KB and some of those other things. But let me know what you thought down in the comments below. That's my recap of the episode. I kind of enjoyed it. I don't like giving it a number value until maybe it's all done, but obviously I think this was the weakest of the previous 3. This was the weakest, and I'm hoping that we get an upswing on the last 4 episodes, but we'll have to wait and see. Guys, thanks for being here. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I know I'm probably supposed to do that at the beginning of the video, but I figured if you made it through all the way to the end, you kind of liked it. So subscribe to the channel, turn on that bell for notifications so you can see when I start dropping some of those theory videos later in the week. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Remember, the Force will be with you always.